Hello, good evening. My name is Corinne Lloyd and I'm the Fellow for Development at Magdalen, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome many of you this evening to attend our first careers virtual event, How to Rock Your CV. And I really hope that all of you will enjoy this occasion and that you will ask plenty of questions. I'm delighted that we have a panel here for you this evening. First of all, we've got Claire Featherstone-Ho from LinkedIn. She's the client solution manager there, and she's going to start off with a presentation on rocking your profile and giving you tips and information about how to really make the most of LinkedIn. After that, we will be having a panel discussion with 3 alumni of Magdalen. And I'm absolutely delighted that we have Connie Emerson, Andrew Cross, and Lee Robinson, who will be taking part in the panel. They represent the 1980s and 1990s in terms of matriculation intake. And I really hope that, again, during the Q&A, following the panel discussion, you will answer as many questions as you feel you want answers to, or even ask as many questions as you feel you want answers to, because these 3 people really do have a lot of insight in the area of recruitment. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Claire. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Corinne. Welcome, everyone. Really excited to be here to talk to you today about rocking your LinkedIn profile. So as Corinne said, I'm Claire. I'm a client solutions manager at LinkedIn. So I work with some of our biggest clients to help them set up their LinkedIn marketing campaigns. And one of the things LinkedIn does just generally is we really want to help as many people as possible get to know LinkedIn, figure out how to best use it, and to help you rock your profile. So if this is going to be a very whistle-stop tour, if you have any other questions afterwards, my name is very unique. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions. I actually come to LinkedIn through a sort of non-traditional background for a tech company. All my university work all the way through PhD was in history, which doesn't normally come up in my everyday job anymore. But I went through a lot of transferable skills to transition to LinkedIn. So if you have any questions about that, as I said, feel free to reach out to me. And so 3 brief things. First, get to know LinkedIn. 2, how to get noticed on LinkedIn, so your profile itself. And number 3, looking at launching your career specifically around networking and building your community on LinkedIn. So the first one, get to know LinkedIn. And first off, we're going to do a very quick 30-second poll, which is just, what does LinkedIn mean to you? If you hear the word LinkedIn, what do you think of? Social media platform, jobs, do you think of learning, selling on LinkedIn, or do you think of marketing? So no right answer, just very quickly, I will give you another 4 or 5 seconds. Thank you very much, everyone. So sharing the results is, to be honest, unsurprisingly, 76% of you think of jobs. We were originally set up as a jobs board. That's where the sort of LinkedIn ethos originally comes from. But to be honest, LinkedIn now does all of those. So I work in our marketing solutions department, selling marketing on the platform, because LinkedIn's mission is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. So it's no longer just about finding you a job. It's also how you talk to other people and how we help you navigate the world of work more generally. Your sort of LinkedIn profile is still your main face onto LinkedIn and a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, but LinkedIn as a whole is much broader. And one of the reasons that LinkedIn is sort of moving into the broader world of work is because the world of work is changing. especially with COVID. We all know how much difference that's making. It's making a difference in the world of work because it's one of the most competitive job markets in history. New skills are emerging and companies expect you to acquire them. I mean, I can probably speak for most people on here that Zoom was not high on my list of skills 15 months ago, but I've gotten pretty good at it. And as part of that, technology is disrupting entire industries and traditional career paths. You're unlikely to stay in the same job for 30 years. I guess I'm about 7 years post PhD at the moment, and this is my 4th job. So it's really just thinking about how we can help you navigate that. And so the power of LinkedIn is that at the moment over 3 new members join every second. So if you don't already have a profile, go sign up, join us. 72 million members, 75 million of those are students and recent graduates. There's 55 million companies that you can explore and 115,000 schools. So one of the things about schools is I also just want to mention is I will be talking about this a lot in finding a job, but if you want to stay, do further education, as I said, I went all the way through PhD, so I can mostly recommend it. It's also a great place to look for the sort of postgraduate education you might be looking for. And so what can LinkedIn do for students? It's an easy way to connect you to the professional world. You can get your profile, you can start meeting people, you can stay informed through professional and industry news. We are becoming much more of a social media platform, as well as a jobs board, as well as a learning tool. So it's really about following companies and people that you want to be interested in, and a way to understand what's happening in the professional world. And also at the heart though, we are still a jobs board. So how can we help you get hired and build your career? So first up, your LinkedIn profile and how to get noticed. So your LinkedIn profile, as I said, it's sort of your face onto LinkedIn. And step 1 is show your face, add a photo. So profiles with photo get 21 times more profile views. And some basic tips: you alone, shoulders up. It's not going to be a photo that you're likely to share on Snapchat or Instagram. It will be much more of a professional photo, because throughout, LinkedIn is still putting your best professional foot forwards. But you don't need to suddenly go out and get a new headshot. This is one of my old LinkedIn profile photos. You know, it looks very professional. I'm speaking at an event, but actually it's a photo of me making a speech at my sister's wedding. So just look through your old photos and find one that you can crop to make it look professional. So don't feel that you need to go out and take a shot up against a white wall or something. You've probably got a photo that exists. Just think about how to make sure it's that professional photo. And so that's sort of the main top thing at the top of your profile. But then a lot of the rest of your LinkedIn profile itself, it is sort of in many ways a mini CV. And it is thinking about showing off your experiences. And sometimes, especially, I know when I was coming out of university, you start thinking, I don't have any experiences. All I've done is be at university, or I've worked a retail job. How is that going to translate onto a LinkedIn profile? And so what I want you to think about throughout the rest of when I'm talking about putting experiences on your LinkedIn profile is thinking about your transferable skills. So what have you learned at Cambridge that you can apply to any career? So for me, it wasn't necessarily the role of the Earls in English government, 1360 to 1385, which was my thesis, but it was research skills and time management and public speaking. And also, and what have you learned of this that will put you ahead of others? So on the side, LinkedIn does a report every year looking at sort of the most in-demand soft skills, and soft and transferable skills, they often are sort of used interchangeably. It's not necessarily looking at your coding skills or your ability to do financial planning. It's thinking about things like, and these are the top ones, creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, that's a big one this year, emotional intelligence. And so just continuously think about your own experiences and how you can bring these sort of qualities out on your LinkedIn profile. And so, as I said, thinking now about those experiences, step 2, if you're at university, is add your education. So this happens to be mine, and sort of make them measurable. So you can see on mine, so presented specialist papers at 4 international conferences, internal seminars, etc. So you can actually say, this is what I did, especially if you're doing graduate work, you're a bit further along. Think about those measurable things. If you taught, but also any extracurriculars you have and anything that can just show off those transferable skills. And one thing I do want to say is that this is my profile now. As I said, I'm now 7, 8, I guess, years post-academia. This was longer when I was just coming out of undergraduate and then out of postgraduate work, because your LinkedIn profile is very fluid. So don't feel that you're putting something on here and you're writing a big section about your education, and 10 years from now, no one's going to care as much. You can always remove things. So just keep that fluidity in mind. And so the second step is add your work experience. Again, this doesn't have to be, oh, I've done 16 internships. This can be if you worked somewhere in college, if you've worked retail, if you've done like lab work, anything like that, anything you've been paid for or worked in a professional setting that was an internship that you probably should have been paid for, but that's a different conversation. Think about those things, and again, make it measurable. So if you worked retail, were you at a closing shift? Did you work cash? Did you have any cash flow that you had to be in charge of? Anything where you've had to do budgeting, but also anything, again, where you've looked at time management, adaptability. Just bring those out on your profile. And again, as you get further down your career, these things can become smaller. Same with volunteer experience. Do you have any society roles in college? Are you a member of a committee? Have you helped out on a charity? And I know that at the moment, some of these things on work experience and volunteer experience are more difficult in a virtual COVID world. You're not in Cambridge, you're not necessarily doing some of these things in person. So it's just thinking about anything also that you've done during COVID that can help. Like, have you been helping relatives who have been shielding, homeschooling younger siblings? Have you done any online activities for societies, presented at online conferences? Anything like that just again shows that adaptability, that willingness to learn and try new things. Shows the technical skills that you've suddenly figured out how to use Zoom. And so it's just thinking about that. So again, so there's no prescriptive right answer on this. This is all just how we and LinkedIn and I think about this when I'm putting together the best profile. And one thing that you can do in a slightly more concrete way is adding skills and endorsements, which look like this. So if you've had leadership experience, if you've had public speaking experience, you can add these. People that you know can say, yes, they've done it, which is great. You can also now take a skills quiz if it's something more concrete. So if you do know coding or you're great at marketing, you can now take a skills quiz, so people can look at your profile and say, oh, they've actually passed a test on that. And it's the same with the licenses and certification section. So like me, I was in history, but I knew I was interested in marketing and data visualization. So I did free online courses. So like, with Google AdWords, I did a data viz course with Codecademy, things like that. And you can then put these on here to show that you are learning these skills, that you have these skills. And it's just that continually showing people who are looking at your profile who you are and what you're interested in is just what really helps and what really makes you stand out. Because I went into interviews, I now work in marketing. I had no academic background in it, but I could say, I am interested in this, and here's how I can show you that I am interested in it, because I was a social secretary and advertised events, and I've done this AdWords course to show that I have some physical knowledge of marketing. And it's things like that that just make you stand out. And the last step on the profile itself is your summary. So it's thinking about, this is up at the top, it's not desperately necessary. It's really if you have a good one, but if you see other people with them, think about it and see what it looks like. And so that's the main part. And then we're just very, very briefly going to look at then how you launch your community on LinkedIn, because this is where you do things like you follow companies you're interested in to learn who they're hiring, what they're doing, and about the company itself. We have influencers on LinkedIn, slightly different than your normal social media influencers. But again, they can really just help you gain that knowledge and the vocabulary of the types of jobs you're looking for. Again, I would recommend, even if you're not sure what you want to go into, start looking through the jobs board, and it will tell you what jobs are out there, what skills they might be looking for, and you can think about how you're going to gain them. Another great one, looking for alumni. So if you go to the University of Cambridge LinkedIn page, click on the Alumni tab, it has all the LinkedIn alumni by location who went to Cambridge, and you can look through them and find people that maybe did your same course or have jobs that you might be interested in, and reach out to them through LinkedIn. It sounds a bit weird. That's how my sister found her first job. And actually, I think her second as well. So you may not get a response from everyone, but there's a lot of people out there who are happy to talk. And this is just the final one on sort of some networking advice. And the main one I really want to go on this is you start small. Start by adding your friends, your family. You may think, oh, why am I adding my friends? They don't have jobs now. Why is this useful? And you never know 12 years later, where the person you're spending most of your time in the pub with, 12 years from now may actually be helpful professionally. They may have a job you're interested in. So just keep building it and just see what comes of it. As I'm sure everyone else will say, it's a long time in the professional world, and this is all just a journey. So finally, as I said, whistle-stop tour of LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, but 5 things to remember about LinkedIn, even if you forget the rest of this presentation. 1, not just a job board. Also use it for companies and people you find interesting to learn about possible careers, and then use it as a job board. 2 is for putting your best professional foot forwards. 3, transferable skills are what's going to set you apart. 4, networking is about growing your connections. You never know where someone is going to end up or who they may meet that puts you in touch with that person to get that job 15 years from now. And the final one is you don't have to do this all at once. This can often sound a bit sort of go and make your profile look like this immediately. Start small and grow your profile and network over time. These are the best tips. Just start putting them into practice when you can. Thank you very much.
Claire, that was super helpful. Thank you so much. It certainly put LinkedIn into perspective for me. Just to say that we will also, of course, address questions to Claire during the Q&A. but we are now going to go ahead with the planned panel discussion. So I am absolutely delighted to introduce once more to you Connie Emerson. She came up in '97 and she's the retail director of the global growth team at Costa Coffee. And Connie read SPS when she was up at Magdalen. Then we have Lee Robinson, came up in '88. He's the founder of Altana Wealth and he read mathematics. And last but not least, we have Andrew Cross, who came up in '85. And he's a former director of financial risk and analytics at NatWest. And he left at the end of last year to start his own consultancy. And Andrew read maths as well. Now, I wanted to ask each of you, who we are delighted to have here today, if you could please give our audience your top 3 tips of what to think about when you are submitting your documentation for a job application. Perhaps I could start with Connie, please.
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to. I have 3 themes. The first one is around authenticity. You need to let your personality shine through. That's the best way to stand out. We get hundreds and thousands of CVs, and the ones that I tend to select, as well as being obviously academically successful, are those where I can get a sense of who the person is. So if you have a particular passion for something, no matter how generic or weird and wonderful it is, talk about it on your CV. Be true to who you are. The second one is about formatting, I guess. Present yourself well. So have a clean number of pages, maximum 2 at this stage in your career, because if you can't be succinct, then we probably don't want to hire you. And then the third one is around demonstrating that you understand and are interested in the world of business that you're applying to. So, and this mirrors a little bit what Claire was talking about with respect to LinkedIn. Demonstrate that there are particular companies that you're interested in, or brands that you're interested in, or particular types of industry. You can do that through mentioning it in your cover letter, if you've done a particular project on something, or just demonstrate through the work that you have done through your education and your work experience, that you have an appreciation for commercial success. So talk about metrics and business metrics. So those would be my 3: authenticity, clean and concise, and demonstrate that you understand the world of business.
Thank you, Connie. That's super helpful. Lee, may I pass over to you?
You want tips on how to get employed, I guess. I don't know if I can give you 3 top tips in as well as Connie, but I think there are some things to bear in mind. I think, first of all, the aim of the CV and cover letter is to get an interview. So, you do need to stand out. You're competing with many others. Approximately 20%, they say only 20% of employers will read the whole CV. So to me, the summary at the top is crucial. And some of the CVs we'll look at today haven't even got a summary at the top. So that is crucial, and you've got to get across. One of the other things I would avoid is the stereotyping. And I always say to people, they put things like I'm a hard worker, or I'm a team player, or I'm good at attention to detail. I always say to someone, would you ever write the opposite? Would you say, I hate working in a team, or I don't have integrity? So if you're going to say something like I do have integrity, or I love working in teams, you have to say this is demonstrated by, I did this, I did that, or I go the extra mile. Well, I've done these extra courses and tried to learn about the course. You need to demonstrate to the CV reader, which might be, by the way, just the head of HR rather than the actual end team employer, but you might be both, that you really have demonstrated that you can draw your skills out and show something to them. So I think that's very, very important for me, is that, this mundaneness and dullness of CVs. If you're applying for, Costa, to pick Connie's firm, or some of the others, it could be one of the 1,000 CVs, and you could be catching someone's eye at Friday at 5 o'clock, and it needs to stand out, and you need to demonstrate it. So, I ask every single person that I hire for internship or a graduate, I always ask them the same question, which is, if you look at your peer group, what are the skills that you think you have that your peers don't have? And of course, I always ask them the opposite, what they need to work on. But the key is, you need to say yourself, what are the keys? The other thing I would say finally, before I pass over to Andrew, is I did this CV talking that we're doing today to a smaller audience in the University of Monaco 2 or 3 years ago. And I asked 30 people, 40 people in the room, I asked them if they'd ever shown their CV to their parents, to their friends, to their peers, or even just to a potential mentor. And I think one person put their hand up. So, really do share your CVs with people around you, definitely people who are older than you, who are in the industry or been in industry. Show them with your peers, with your friends, maybe compare notes, but don't just go in blind. I did, I can tell you now. I'm not saying that we don't do it, but I think it's so important to get feedback. And someone says, well, you haven't drawn out one of your key strengths here, or actually, you know what, I've got to be fair, Fred, you're not really that good at that. You should really focus on this. So, and in Cambridge particularly, you have a number of tutors who you could just go up to and say, where was I strong? Where do you think I'm strong? What was my strong point in my coursework, and what I did, and see if they've got something. So, don't be afraid to get positive and negative criticism. I'll pass over to Andrew.
Yeah, well, I'll hopefully build on what Connie and Lee have said, because all great points. Well, as Lee's pointed out, maybe 20% of CVs get read in their entirety. The other key stats, believe it if you want to, but I think there's a lot of truth. 8 seconds is the amount of time that typical CV attention gets. So when we look at the examples, you've got to think, can I get the key information I need to decide about whether I'm actually going to read more in under 8 seconds? I think and it's brutal, but it's just the way it is. So I think focusing on being brief, being to the point, and having something that grabs the reader's attention. I think Lee's point about feedback is great. I know, in some ways you want to always hear how great you are. You need someone who's going to give you some pretty brutal truth. It can be a family friend, someone who works, particularly if you're looking to move from an academic life into a commercial life, someone who actually, lives in the commercial world, and say, well, I know you're smart. You've got Cambridge on your CV. I don't need a page and a half of that. I'm not worried about that, to be honest. That's my least worry in most jobs. I want to know how will you transition. So and that's all part of putting yourself in the shoes of the people who are receiving your CV. What's important to them as opposed to what's important to you. And I think that links to my final point, which is think about, and again, it builds on Lee's point, avoid generalities. Think about achievement, not activity. Okay, you did stuff, but what did you achieve? And to what extent, the more you can put a number on it, I did an internship, we saved 20% of this, or we made this thing go quicker by 10%, something that shows that you understand the world of work, particularly commercial work, is about performance and improvement. And anything that can translate into that, even if it's not a paid experience that you've had, I think is more likely to show that you understand that the world of work is different from the world of academia.
Thank you, Andrew. That was super helpful. I think what we'll do now, bearing these 3 tips in mind, we are going to be looking at the 4 CVs that have been submitted, and I would like to thank those people who have submitted the CVs. I believe Sarah, my colleague, is going to screen share, and we're going to look at the first CV, CV1. And this CV is from somebody who is doing a PhD in land economy. I'm going to hand over again to the panel. Perhaps, Andrew, you can start this time and then pass on to one of your co-panelists and share your impressions.
Okay, so these will take more than 8 seconds, but this is kind of, each of these CVs is what it tells us in 8 seconds. We'll do for each of them 3 points that are positive to pick out, and then 3 let's call them, would be even better if. I mean, number one, Lee's told you the answer, no summary at the top, so that's something that could work better. I did go through this one ahead of time though, and what I did like about this, it's bullet points, so it's pretty easy to get the key information. And I think also it runs onto 2 pages only, so meets Corinne's guidance of no more than 2 pages. So the basic style and structure is good, but there are definitely some things that can improve on. I'll perhaps hand on to Lee or Connie for some improvement points.
Can I be brutal? Is that allowed or not allowed? I thought it was horrible. I just thought it was a horrible CV. I think it would have gone straight in. If this was in with another 500, I think it would have gone straight to the no pile. It's cluttered. It's got. It's unclear to me why someone does 3 years of mathematics and then does land economy. So you definitely need to explain that. There's a lot of repetitiveness. Well, yeah, you did some publications, very detailed, but so what? What was useful about them for you and for the company? Then you've got work and leadership experience. Is great that you actually have that, but again, it's a little bit repetitive, and it doesn't draw in why you were chosen, why you did it, what your passion for it was, or whether people thought you were very good at it. And then the internships just say that you were there and didn't say what you did and how you helped those companies. And then finally, you go down to the bottom with skills and interests, and it's almost bigger than everything else. It needs to be cut down and more focused. The whole thing was just, it's a mess. It needs to be started again, frankly. Sorry.
Yes, I would agree. I'd agree with Andrew and Lee. It just reads like a list. I don't get any personality. I don't get any understanding of who this person is and what they would bring to my team. So like Lee said, I'd start again.
Can I ask a question before we go to CV2? Apart from the fact that it has been agreed that it is a list, do you feel it makes a difference how a CV is formatted? As in use of color, use of photography, that sort of thing. Does that make a difference?
It's the structure. As I said, I don't need a photo, and you don't need a lot of color. It can just make it messy. As Lee and Connie said, you just want a crisp structure which brings you at the top to the most important things first and helps you get value out of reading it.
Can I just slightly disagree with you, Andrew? Sorry, I'm going to be Mr. Nasty tonight, obviously. I had this conversation at the University of Monaco, and I obviously come from an Anglo-Saxon background, and I've worked in American banks and UK companies, and there's no picture, right? That's the background, right? No picture. But when we spoke with people in the audience, and we had some European employers in the room, there's 4 of us giving this talk, and they were very strong on the fact that you do have a picture. And a lot of the younger people in the room was like, well, LinkedIn and all these other places have pictures. And if you are going to do a run, for example, say you're going to be interviewed by 10 people in the day, and those 10 people are going to interview another 10 people each. When they come back the next day and they do, the HR team says, what did you think of Fred? What do you think about Joe? Having the picture on the CV, oh yeah, I remember Joe. He was the one with the earring, or he was the one with the dark hair. I just think, I actually have changed my mind, Andrew. I used to be in your camp. I actually think a photo, I think a link to any LinkedIn profile, or a link to maybe a PDF of their thesis or whatever. I actually think, I think I've changed my view. To be honest, over time.
Yes,
it's just my view. I've just changed my opinion.
I think it can work either way, whatever the individual is comfortable with, as long as the CV speaks to the person reading it. I wouldn't go overboard on color and photos unless you're applying for a job in sort of design of some sort. You want to look like you're a serious person who can write a white paper without lots of fancy design stuff. So I think a little bit of blue or green, subtle, can help break up what can otherwise look a bit boring. But I wouldn't go far.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you need to be remembered the next day, and having something on there, a photo can help. And I appreciate the chat comment about discrimination, but you know, really employers shouldn't be discriminating, and those firms discriminating, you know what, it's good you're not working for them in the first place, frankly. I don't think that's going to happen with graduates in general. I hope not in the big employers, but it does happen, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot, unfortunately, I agree with the point on memorability. There is a lot of research that, you know, names and photos in particular can even unconsciously result in discrimination. But I think that the point we do agree on is working out how to be memorable. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you all. So if we move on to CV2, please, Sarah. Now, this is somebody with a BA in economics. Why don't I go over to Connie here first?
Sorry, just finding the unmute button. So I think that this one is definitely a step up from the previous. As my co-panelists have mentioned, it's still always good to have a you know, a summary at the top that kind of compels and engages the reader. What I liked about this one was some of the colour, some of the understanding of business that came through in some of the experience. However, it was still a little bit too focused on what they'd done rather than the impact out the other end. So, for example, you know, I assisted running a fund that managed 880 million in assets, and it grew by X% in the period that I was there, for example. So try and focus a little bit more on outputs as well as just what you've done. This is the sort of colour that I think is acceptable. I wouldn't go any further than this.
Thank you, Connie. Andrew.
Yeah, a definite improvement. Perhaps build on a couple of good things. This was one page only, so I think does a okay job of getting it all there, but saying would benefit from some tune-up. It does, and it talks about achievements and responsibilities. So I think again, focus on, you know, not just what you did, but what did it and what was the impact. I think is good. So it's headed. This is definitely headed in the right direction. So a minor thing on the could be better, but I mean, it's a simple thing. At the top, there's like something look like an interesting qualification in the securities investment exam. If you've not done it, just say, you know, targeting June 21 or whenever you're going to pass it. So expect to pass at this time. So the reader just views that as a positive statement rather than not yet completed. Just sounds, negative. So just simple things to make it more, as an achievement orientated rather than just activity. I'll hand over to Lee.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt this is a big step up. I think there's a few little things that can be polished here. A quite obvious one, underneath work experience, if you scroll down, please, you've got, I was tasked with completing an investment trust analysis spreadsheet for most of the week. You've just kind of taken the May 2018 4 weeks impression down to you're only there for a week. I'm not saying you should lie in your CV, but there's creativity on how you present things. And I think at the bottom where you brought out your personal skills about the the budget challenge competition, great. But also maybe where you talk about badminton and being the treasurer and everything else, maybe just say demonstrating my strong organizational skills or something like that. Just maybe remind the reader what you bring to the table with this. And of course you need a summary at the top. What are you trying to do and where you're going? But yeah, the color scheme's good. It talks about I, it talks about what you're doing. This is much better.
Okay, thank you very much.
Final comment on the personal skills. And again, people have different views. Connie said in the introductory remarks about what you are as a person. So it's definitely helpful to bring that across. I just think that for most commercial jobs, your grade 7 in bassoon is going to be not that important relative to your transferable skills. Maybe different. I'm sure your mum or dad's very proud of that, and maybe it matters in terms of being a rounded person. So just think carefully in terms of the weight of how much of that, what's the real distinctive thing, as opposed to, an employer won't care what grade you've got in a music instrument. It's not, unless it's your total passion.
Okay.
Yeah, but the bassoon, again, you could maybe work another way. In an orchestra, you're right, the grade 7 is not helpful, but it shows that you can work with others easily. You can be on time. You can be organized. It takes a lot of memorable. It's a lot of things. You got to react to people around you. I think there's something you can draw out of that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bit better.
Connie, did you have any closing remarks on CV2 before we go to the next one?
No, just to say that I did feel that I got a better sense of who this person was. There's flavour and richness and authenticity in it.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So now we go to CV3, and this is somebody who is currently doing an MPhil in machine learning and machine intelligence. Shall we open this one with Andrew, please?
Yeah, so first impressions were good on this one. As we said, missing the summary at the top, which would really convert what I think is actually a lot of really good content into what this person is. So I've got a good sense of the achievements and skills. I don't really get a sense of the person, but I did like the structure and the layout, the quite imaginative use of very, bullet points or intermediate, so you can get a lot of information really quickly. And I read this probably in 8 seconds and thought, okay, here's a person who, if I was looking for an analyst or someone with machine learning skills, has done a lot, both academically and in a commercial environment, I'd be interested in knowing more about this person.
Okay, Lee?
I'm not sure I'd break out freelance and work experience. I think I'd put them together. It is kind of what I think I would do. I think it is good. It talks about what you're doing. Not clear, for example, when delivered Angular virtual try-on app, whether that was the individual or part of a team. It could just be clarified. Just an FYI, when you're clearly not a European and obviously now not a British subject, I think one of the things here, you'd want to make it very clear whether you've got the ability to work in the UK, if it's the UK that you're pitching for. Obviously, if it's the US, it's less of an issue. But the first thing I would do as an employer is go, oh, hold on, this is a US person. Am I going to really be able to get them a work permit easily, particularly as a graduate? So you just maybe want to clarify that as well. And again, just talk about what you want to do with these skills, because this person clearly is a problem solver. They clearly got something that's applicable in the workplace. Draw it out a bit more.
And if I can just build on that, I would agree. I think it's a well laid out, well structured CV. As somebody who is not hugely familiar with the sort of the type of developing and coding that this person is clearly brilliant at, I read it and I don't understand what a lot of the words mean. And that's fine if you're applying for a job in that area. But if you were applying for a job in my team, I would read it and I would put it in the no pile, because there's a lot of quite specific language there. So I think it's always right to tailor your CV to the audience that you're writing to. It may mean that you end up having 10 versions of your CV, but honestly, you're more likely to get a job that way than having one that says the same thing to everybody.
Okay, thanks, Connie. That's great. Right, so we'll move slightly on.
And that's, sorry, just to build on that final point, it's really, really important. You don't need, it's not necessarily the same CV for every opportunity. If you're looking at a range of tasks from the more technical to less, you may well be a technical person, but not every role. You can have these different versions. I know as you get more experience in your career, recommendation is you really just have a document which has your achievements, and then you mix and match according to what you're applying for.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's really helpful. And now we're moving to CV4. And I think what's of course interesting there is that it does contain something that you've commented the absence on each of them. And this is a person who is doing a master in genomic medicine. Lee, will you open on this one?
Yes, it's a little long. It needs to, and I think some of that's also the way they've done the font sizing. So I think, you know, it's great they've got a personal statement. I think it talks about their the skills. Maybe it doesn't talk quite how they apply them to role, but I think that's good. It needs to be maybe cut down by 2 or 3 lines at the beginning. It then talks about key skills and achievements, which again I think is very useful, and you know, has something interesting in there. Cryptocurrencies. He's done sales. It's got a lot of different skills there that I think for an employer that's interesting. Then it kind of goes a little bit awry, I think, on the education side. I think this BBB is okay, but the A star, AAB, I think is odd. And then you've got all these grades, and you list 5 subjects. I'd almost say A star, 3 A's, 5 B's, or something. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me at all. And then employment history is very good. Again, it talks about yourself, what I did, you know, the research that was, you know, what the implications were. So I think that's very good. Again, I think that's all fine. And then the hobbies and interests. I think it's good, but I think again it's, you know, just cut some of the words out. Aside from university and previous work experience, I don't think you need that. You know, I think maybe just trim it down and just be more succinct there. And then for references, I don't know if they've been deliberately taken out, but either put them in or don't put them in at all. And I don't think at this stage you need to put references in. I think it would be references on request and just shorten the CV down. But yeah, this has got some potential as a CV. It needs a bit of polish, but it's got some potential.
Thank you, Lee. Connie?
Yes, I would agree with everything that Lee just said. I think if you were to shrink this down to 2 pages, by cutting out content, not just font size, I think you'd get to a pretty decent CV. I personally, I'm more interested in the detail of the work experience being near the top of the CV rather than some of the academia, because by definition, if the CV has landed on my desk, it's gone through academic screening. So I want the richness of what particular stuff you've done in your academic career. But then what I'm really interested in is what else you've done. You know, there's some really interesting things in here around £20,000 on Depop. I mean, I don't know what that is, but it sounds great. I would escalate that up to the front, up to the top, because that's quite a big, exciting and unusual thing for a student to have done. Yeah, so that would be my thought. Float to the top all of the things that are really going to attract people to you as being interesting and different.
Okay, great. Thank you, Connie. And Andrew, I leave you to give the final say on this last CV.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's a lot of great content. Whoever has this one, I'd suggest take CV number 3 structure and take your content and, okay, maybe we give you 2 pages, not 1, but put your content in that form. There's some really great stuff, but you just have to work way too hard to get it. And on the summary, I must admit, I would say it's way too long. I mean, I would cut it radically down to the most important things in a couple of sentences. This feels like a good first draft of everything you want to say, but it needs 2 or 3 more rounds of revisions and editing to get it sharp. But there's some great content there. You just need to kind of make it sing more.
Okay, that's great. Thanks ever so much. Right, so we've had a number of questions, and without further ado, if we just thank you, stop the screen share. So one question that is quite interesting: if the average time spent reviewing a CV is 8 seconds, what would catch your attention enough for you to decide to want to read more? Who wants to go with this one?
Connie, go. You go, Connie.
I was going to say some form of business experience where you've actually delivered something. That's what was, I mean, if we're talking about in a pool of brilliantly academic Cambridge CVs, that's the thing that would make me continue reading.
Andrew or Lee, do you have something?
Something which even cunningly connects to what my business is. I mean, so it's. I probably not even consciously, but subconsciously, someone's thought about what this role is, this company, whatever, and has managed to finagle a hook into that opening paragraph that hooks me. So you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the reader and say, okay, what could be in the right zone? What have I got that could hook me into that organization?
Yeah, for me, it's an understanding that it's not about career development. We all know it is. We're all going to be graduates. We all know we're giving something back by taking graduate. But I want to see, this is what I can do for you, your firm, you, the HR team, you, the firm, you're the person reading it. This is what I can do for you in the next year. And that's all I want to see. And that would stand out to me, I think I can grow sales because I demonstrate at Depop I could do it or whatever. I just think something like that stands out for me.
Okay, thank you. Claire, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, it is that, and it is, I think, as Connie has said earlier, it is just that authenticity as well. Just making that you are a person. Someone also mentioned something that I did on my CV. I had 5 or 6 different versions depending on which type of job I was applying for, especially early on when I wasn't sure exactly which type I really wanted. I was still exploring. I restructured my CV differently and called out different things depending on what I was applying for.
Okay, that's great. Now we have a question which actually relates to a LinkedIn profile. And the question is, how do we best balance protecting our personal information, but at the same time broadcasting ourselves to the audience? And I mean, clearly that is specifically to being on that platform.
Yep. And so it's something that actually, in many ways, LinkedIn and members on LinkedIn are continuously sort of figuring out themselves. And how I really think about it is that it's always through a professional lens. So yes, be authentic. If you support charities, you support movements, you want to get involved and talk about things that are happening, that's great. And talk about your interests and what you actually like to do. But it's always just thinking about it in is this something that I would bring to work? So don't sort of shut down your personality. Don't shut down yourself, but just always think about it is in the professional context. And so you don't need to be sharing, like, if you want to share it's your birthday, go ahead. You're probably not sharing your holidays. But if you want to, again, please go ahead. But so it's just always thinking about that. And I mean, LinkedIn as a platform is very much into member safety, member trust, and professional conversations. So we do spend a lot of time as a platform making sure that we're not asking you for information that you don't want to share, and that the conversations remain open yet professional. So never feel like you need to share more on LinkedIn than you want to. But just, so if you just want to use it as a sort of online CV, go ahead. That's great. If you want to get involved in the conversations, you can also do that too. It's really up to you.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So now we have a couple of things that sort of fall into each other, and these are more specifically, I think, about the sort of construction of the CV. One of them is, what would be an appropriate way to add to a CV that the person was a UK citizen, so as to deal with the issue that was raised during the discussion of the CVs, whether a person is able to use in the UK. And then following on from that is with the summary, how, what would you put into those 3-4 lines, and how would you phrase that summary? Perhaps you could start, Lee, with that.
Yeah, look, it's idiosyncratic, right, on each person, and you need to think about. It depends what the role you're going for. You know, in some cases, it really does. Your academic background is important. In some cases, the computer one, for example, the detail and experience is important. In some cases, it's sales. Some cases, it's you know, you're just doing a completely new role. And as Claire said, you know, she did history and she did something else, and you used to draw it out. So, I think this is where it comes to talking to your friends, your tutors, mentors, and other people, and just saying, look at my CV. What stands out for you, and what can I then emphasize? That's a bit different from my peer group, and there is no simple answer, to be honest with you. It's different for different people, and I couldn't give you a straight answer unless I looked at that person on their own merit.
Connie?
You know, it's a good question. I just went and looked at my own CV in order to enable me to answer it. I have gone the route of starting off with stating something about who I am, and then a one-liner summary of my experience, and then a one-liner summary of what I would therefore bring to a potential role. So I think if you think about those three, so something about yourself, something about what you've done, and something about what you would bring, and summarize everything into those 3 sentences.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
On the British citizenship side, I think it's just probably an easy way to put it. I mean, Lee pointed out, if someone's educated outside the UK and now outside the UK, so it's implicitly going to be a concern. You can just put it either right to work or British citizen. You know, it doesn't need explanation. People just realise that where you might have come from isn't a barrier to being employed in this country. The summaries, I would do a bit of trawl around LinkedIn. I think there's probably some free course on LinkedIn. Claire will clarify to tell you, good examples. Have a look at a few different ones, but I think Connie's. I was just looking at a couple of people I know, and sort of a basically 3 points is a good way to go. And it should be something that, how would you, if someone read that to someone else and said, oh, you saw that person, or you're going to see that person, what are they about? If they read it to someone else, would it do a good job of capturing how you'd want to be, someone to know about you to consider for this role, or consider generally?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I am sorry, but having started off saying to my colleagues here on the panel that we will not overrun, I'm afraid we are going to overrun, because I'm going to ask a final question of each of you, just because it's a very interesting question. And I'm sorry, and I apologize to those people whose questions will not be answered. But this question, many large companies ask if you'd like to apply via your LinkedIn profile or by uploading a CV when they are recruiting. Given that LinkedIn provides less flexibility in how you present yourselves in comparison to a CV, are there ever any advantages via LinkedIn? And obviously, I would add to those 3 of you who are not directly linked to LinkedIn, do you have a preference if somebody applies but via CV or via LinkedIn? Does it make a difference? Can I start off with Connie, please?
Yes, I actually don't know if my company accepts LinkedIn profiles only as opposed to via CVs. I tend to get given CVs. However, with GDPR, it's often quite difficult for an organization to shuffle CVs around. Therefore, my natural first step is to go and look somebody up on LinkedIn. So regardless of which way you apply, I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn to make my decision. Therefore, personally, I don't think that it matters. If both are options, then whatever you prefer.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's probably not going to make a fundamental difference. I mean, it depends a little bit on the size of the organization. Larger organizations, will potentially use LinkedIn. Increasingly, it's an efficient platform for sourcing CVs in, so I think probably get some insight of that organization if you can find someone who works there or someone's got an idea, does it, is LinkedIn the one that's actually going to get you into the HR queue, as opposed to someone who's got to fill it something out of an email, which, it feels more personal, but could just get lost in the wash. So, yeah, the bigger the organization, I'd be probably, without any extra information, be biased towards going through the main channel, because that at least gets you into contention.
Okay. Claire, you will probably offer a slightly different view here before we go to Lee. So please go ahead.
I actually do agree. So obviously, I have to big up. We have a recruiter product. It's our big product. You can attach a CV when you are applying through usually LinkedIn Easy Apply. If you're applying right through the job thing, again, it does probably depend on the size of the organization. LinkedIn obviously works with a lot of the very big companies, and LinkedIn's entire goal in that line of business is to make it easier for recruiters to find your CVs, to find your profiles. So if it's a big company and they have the ability to apply through LinkedIn, I would. But if you are looking at a smaller company, and this is where, again, maybe if it's something where you think you're going to want a cover letter, if you're going to want to talk to someone directly, then try and find that person. You can use LinkedIn to try and find them and reach out to them directly. But if it's a big company, LinkedIn is just trying to make this as seamless as possible. So we assume a lot of them are using LinkedIn. So as Connie said, they're probably going to look you up on LinkedIn anyway. You can attach a CV. It's all going to the same place. It just makes the entire process more streamlined.
Thank you, Claire. And Lee?
Look, it's kind of obvious, but if you really want the job, do both. I've sent the CV, go through LinkedIn and say, Connie, I'd like to work with you at Costa. I see you're an ex-alumni, but I have already sent my CV to Andrew at whatever, at HR. Why not do both? There's no exclusive or, right? If you really want the job, do both. I think the only thing I'd slightly worry about by LinkedIn only, you would be shocked how some companies just are technology poor. You'd just be shocked. One of my big bank brokers still sends out net asset values by fax to clients and receives confirmations by fax. I mean, this is a major top 10 European bank. I mean, it's just shocking, really. So I do both. If you really want the job, do both. Why not?
Well, thank you very much, Lee. I think that's an excellent note on which to bring this session to a close. I would like to thank all of you. I'm really delighted that you took the time to share your wisdom with you. Thank you very much, Claire, for highlighting LinkedIn and showing us features on how to make the most of that. And thank you to all of our attendees for giving up a little chunk of their evening. And I would like to end by encouraging our students, if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists, please email the Alumni and Development Office and we will forward your emails to the relevant people. We would be glad to do that. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.